What's up, my comic comrades? The Sith Lords have always been one of the best aspects of the Star Wars franchise. They're the greatest threat for the Jedi and the looming evil constantly manipulating everything behind the scenes in the pursuit of power. But while you're most likely familiar with Sith Lords and apprentices from the movies like Darth Sidious, Darth Vader, and Count Dooku, there are many other Sith characters throughout the Star Wars universe that have deep and important legacies. In fact, back in August, we spotlighted one of them in our History of Darth Bane episode. And as we promised in that episode, we're following that up today with a look at two more legendary Sith, Darth Malak and Darth Nihilus. There's been rumor recently that Lucasfilm is planning to bring these characters into canon and live action in their main Star Wars universe, which would be incredible. But let's get into their origins and find out why. Darth Malak first appeared in the Knights of the Old Republic video game back in 2003, where he served as the main antagonist. Then later, his first comic appearance was in Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, published by Dark Horse in 2006. He was introduced with the nickname Squint in issue 0, first identified as Alec in issue 10, then later went by the name Malak for the first time in Knights of the Old Republic issue 31. But let's go back to the beginning of Malak's story, back when he went by the name Alec on his homeworld, the planet Quelli. During the Mandalorian Wars, the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders attacked Alec's planet, causing mass devastation, forcing Alec to flee to the Galactic Republic. There he was found to be sensitive in the Force, and he was taken on as a Jedi Padawan on Dantooine, where he got the nickname Squint. He also befriended another Padawan, Revan, who you might recognize as Darth Revan. We actually have a History of Darth Revan episode right here, which I suggest you watch, since he's a huge part of Darth Malak's story. Now then, both Padawans' desires for knowledge led them to Coruscant to train with the Jedi Master, Jar Leston. Meanwhile, the Mandalorian Wars waged on, and after the Battle of Cathar, where the Mandalorians conquered and enslaved the planet, the Jedi joined with the Republic fleet against Mandalore's armies. But the Council still called for caution, hobbling the war efforts to the point where Republic citizens' sufferings influenced now Jedi Knights Revan and Alec enough to rebel against the Council's inaction, and recruiting thousands of Jedi to spearhead the war against the Mandalorians. Revan and Alec turned the tide of the war, eventually defeating the leader of the Mandalorians, Mandalore the Ultimate, above Malachor 5, and forcing the remaining Mandalorians to destroy their armor and war mounts. But day by day, victory took its toll, as with every moral compromise, Alec could feel himself slipping more and more to the dark side. With the Mandalorian Wars concluded, Alec and Revan having saved the galaxy, Alec starts to realize that their efforts would become meaningless if a strong leader doesn't take charge and steer the galaxy in the right direction. So knowing he can only trust the soldiers he fought with due to their shared experience, Alec brings this idea up to Revan, who surprisingly agrees. With knowledge gained from the Sith Tomb World Korriban, which they had visited along with Dantooine, Kashyyyk, Tatooine, and Manaan to collect pre-Republic Rakata artifacts during the war, Revan and Alec announced themselves to the galaxy as the new Sith, Darth Revan and Darth Malak. The soldiers and Jedi they had fought with in the Mandalorian War joined their cause out of loyalty to their leadership in the war, and together they took control of most of the Republic fleet, starting the Second Sith War, also known as the Jedi Civil War. Revan and Malak went on to revitalize the Sith Training Academy on Korriban to train a new army of Sith to defend their empire. They then followed the clues they had with the Rakata artifacts to find the lost Rakata civilization and their Starforge, which possessed the power to create machines and weapons at will to supply the Sith army. Upon finding the Starforge, Darth Revan took on the title of Dark Lord of the Sith, making Darth Malak his apprentice, with Malak begrudgingly agreeing. Throughout the Second Sith War, Malak began to see his master as soft, causing a bunch of tension between the two of them, which ultimately led to a lightsaber duel between them where Malak loses his lower jaw. That's why Darth Malak wears that large metal jaw with a vocabulator that makes him speak with a robotic voice in the game. This of course festers Malak's hatred for Revan to the point where Malak takes his revenge by firing on Revan's flagship. But what he doesn't know is that the Jedi Knight Bastila Shan had boarded Revan's flagship with a Jedi strike team to apprehend Revan and turn the war in the Republic's favor. With her fellow Jedi and Malak's barrage, Bastila was able to successfully capture Darth Revan, but was the only survivor of their strike team. Malak, now thinking his master had died, then takes the title of Dark Lord of the Sith to rule the Empire, and would find a Sith apprentice in the fallen Jedi, Darth Bandit. But of course, Darth Revan wasn't dead. Rather, he was taken to the Jedi Council, where instead of being sentenced to death or imprisonment, the Jedi used the Force to look through and then erase Darth Revan's memories, giving him a new identity as a soldier in the Republic Army. This is actually where the story of the Knights of the Old Republic video game begins, as in the game's official story, the player's character is the unnamed Revan having lost his memories, who would later be trained again in the ways of the Jedi when the Council realized Revan was their best chance of defeating Darth Malak. So Revan would go on to hunt down Darth Malak, eventually confronting him on the Starforge, where Malak explained that he had brought several bodies of fallen Jedi to the Starforge, and instead of letting the dead Jedi become one with the Force, he was using the Starforge to corrupt whatever remained of their Force energy and using it to power himself. Yeah, how very Sith Lord of him. He was essentially keeping them in purgatory while taking their power. But Revan refused to let that go on, and with the help of his allies like Bastila Shan, he started freeing as many Jedi as he could, allowing them to finally finally become one with the Force, and in turn take away Malak's energy supply. The battle ends with Revan dealing a fatal blow, and as Darth Malak gives in to death, he says to Revan, "Still spouting the wisdom of a Jedi, I see. Maybe there is more truth in their code than I ever believed. I alone must accept responsibility for my fate, and in the end, as the darkness takes me, I am nothing." This realization ends his hatred for Revan, and Darth Malak dies regretting what he'd done to his old friend. Malak's story ends with the Republic fleet annihilating the Starforge and Darth Malak's body burning in the flames. Pretty freaking cool, right? Hopefully one day we get to see this awesome Star Wars character in live action. But now let's move on to Darth Nihilus. His first and really most substantial appearance was as the main villain in the Knights of the Old Republic 2 video game. Not much is known about his origin, but of what we do know, Nihilus' story starts with the Mandalorian Wars. The man who would become Darth Nihilus had lost everything, his friends, his family, and his will to live to the Mandalorian Wars. He was on the planet of Malachor 5 when Meetra Surik, a general in Revan's Republic army, recognized that the Republic forces wouldn't arrive in time to engage the Mandalorian army, and reluctantly gave the order to activate the mass shadow generator. The resulting death and destruction caused a substantial wound in the Force, creating a shockwave that would have killed Surik had she not unconsciously disconnected herself from the Force. Meanwhile, the generator killed nearly everyone on the planet's surface, with Nihilus being one of the few survivors. The artificial shadows trapped Nihilus on Malachor 5, while illness from the shadow's effects cannibalized his body, a vast emptiness devouring his humanity. His condition got worse until he found another survivor and unconsciously drained their life force to feed his internal hunger. Draining another's life force scared Nihilus, making him sick, but for a moment the memories, the illness, the hunger all disappeared. Then the moment passed and the emptiness came back more severe than before. The more Nihilus indulged the hunger, the quicker the moment of relief passed, so he began feeding relentlessly until he came across the blind Sith Lord Darth Traya. She could feel his existence as a gaping wound in the Force. The Force fueled his hunger, and she could show him how to devour worlds. A wound in the Force, by the way, is basically a weakness in the fabric of the Force caused by a dramatic event, in this case, a mass shadow generator. Nihilus didn't care much for the Sith or the Force, but his hunger had become insatiable, leaving him no choice but to agree to become Darth Traya's apprentice alongside her other apprentice, Darth Sion. It's around this time that Revan defeats Darth Malak, leaving the Sith without a leader, and Revan's defection causing a civil war among the Sith. So together, Darth Traya, Darth Nihilus, and Darth Sion attempted to take his place, forming a Sith triumvirate. Each of them took on a Sith Lord title: Darth Traya, Lord of the Betrayal, Darth Sion, Lord of Pain, and Darth Nihilus, Lord of Hunger. And of course, the Sith cycle came around as Nihilus and Sion betrayed their master Traya. Using the power Traya had taught him to control, Nihilus severed Traya's connection to the Force and exiled her. Upon her exile, Traya's followers disbanded back into tons of separate factions, all trying to seize power, while Nihilus and Sion went on to destroy the Jedi Order together in what's known as the Jedi Purge. Sion simply killed as many Jedi as he could, but Nihilus took a flagship, the Ravager, from the remaining mass shadow on Malachor 5 and went on to feed his hunger for the Force and increase his power. Over time, as Darth Nihilus consumed entire planets worth of life energy, he became so absorbed by the dark side of the Force and his hunger that his physical body literally started to erode. He needed to act quickly before his body was completely devoured, so he used his power to transfer his consciousness to his mask and cloak, his useless body disintegrating as he became living primitive intention. Crazy, right? Darth Nihilus is literally a dark side spirit, just a floating mask and armor wrapped in a robe that he keeps together to give him the shape of a human form so he could still use his Force powers and wield a lightsaber. Now that Nihilus had become essentially living hunger, he binged on the Force, nearly completely getting rid of the Jedi when he destroyed the planet Qatar. The only survivor of the destruction was a woman named Visas Mar, who Nihilus took on as his apprentice. Now, 5 years into the conflict, Nihilus and the Sith believed that they had either killed or converted all the remaining Jedi until Nihilus sensed a growing presence in the Force and sent his apprentice Mar to wipe out the last of the Jedi. That Force presence is Meetra Surik, the Jedi general that set off the mass shadow generator and had their connection to the Force severed. She being helped by Darth Traya, now going by her old Jedi name Kreia. This is actually where the story of the Knights of the Old Republic 2 video game begins. When Visas Mar found and tried to kill Surik, Surik was able to redeem and retrain Mar in the light side of the Force. And together with Kreia, Darth Traya's Jedi name, the three of them gathered allies and boarded Nihilus' flagship to confront him. Of course, Darth Nihilus is too powerful for them to handle, so Mar enters a trance-like state to sever her connection with her former master, temporarily disrupting his connection to the Force. Nihilus tries to feed on Surik to regain his strength, but his hunger is mysteriously repelled as if confronted by his exact opposite, because remember, Surik had severed her connection to the Force and became a wound in the Force, much like Nihilus when she set off the mass shadow generator. This weakened Nihilus even more, enough so the trio was able to kill him, ending the reign of Darth Nihilus. However, his mask and armor still contained his spirit and were collected and buried on the Sith homeworld of Korriban. His spirit is still able to be contacted using a holocron Nihilus had created during the Jedi Purge, which contained all of his Sith knowledge and secrets. But that wraps up the legends of Darth Malak and Darth Nihilus, so now it's time to move on to powers and abilities. Malak's training as a Jedi was working to be a Jedi Guardian, which focused on lightsaber combat and physical aspects of the Force, which led Malak to become one of the most skilled swordsmen of his era. He fought with a one-handed aggressive style and used the Force as a way to protect and heal. But when he turned to the dark side, becoming the Sith Lord Malak, he was able to Force choke more than one person at once, could throw and impale enemies with his lightsaber with extreme accuracy, create a whirlwind with the Force to encircle his enemies, and could even create a stasis field to freeze his enemies in place. He could also use the Force to increase his speed, leap large distances, and this one is crazy, Malak was able to make himself virtually invulnerable to most Force powers for a short amount of time. Darth Malak could also amplify his screams, creating shockwaves sort of like Black Canary. In addition, he would use the Force to enter your mind and see what your innermost fears were, and then convert that into anger. And he possessed dark healing, which basically stole the life force from someone and gave it to another. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. He can do so much more than we can list, which is why he's one of the most infamous Sith Lords of all time. As for Nihilus, the Dark Lord of Hunger, he's an incredibly powerful Sith Lord so consumed by the dark side of the Force that he would become a slave to his own power, needing to constantly feed off the Force energy that exists in all living things. He was so corrupted by the dark side that his very speech caused pain and death to anyone who heard it. Almost think of him as a Force parasite, which gives Nihilus one of the most powerful Force drains in all of Star Wars, allowing him to drain on a scale as huge as an entire planet. And his reach in the Force extended far enough to sense Force sensitives across the galaxy. Other than that, Darth Nihilus had immense telekinetic ability so powerful he built and held together his flagship, the Ravager. He also has the Force power to transfer essence, which he used on his own spirit, transferring it into his own mask and armor, and he has Force Scream and Lightning. He has a red lightsaber which he wields in an aggressive one-handed style, having learned some of the greatest Sith teachings in dueling and the Force. Overall, Darth Nihilus is by far one of the baddest Sith Lords to ever exist in the galaxy. As for reading recommendations, for Darth Malak, of course, there's the first Knights of the Old Republic video game, the Knights of the Old Republic comic by Dark Horse, and the Star Wars novel The Old Republic Revan. As for Darth Nihilus, there's the second Knights of the Old Republic video game and the Unseen Unheard comic from Star Wars Tales issue 24.
First up for the week of October 5th, we have Edge of Spider-Verse issue 5. This issue introduces two new Spider-Verse characters, Webweaver and Hunter Spider, and both of them are dangerous. Here we have Hulk issue 9, thoroughly shaken by his battle with Thor and Titan's impact on his friends. Bruce Banner decides that his best company is himself and only himself. Hulk Planet starts here. Third in line, we have Black Adam, The Justice Society Files, Dr. Fate issue 1. This issue gives us the backstory to the DCEU's Dr. Fate that will be appearing in the Black Adam movie. Next up, we have Batman issue 128. Failsafe has taken his family, his allies, and now his city. Broken and beaten, Batman retreats to the last place on Earth he can hide, but nothing can truly hide from Failsafe. And finally, we have Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths issue 5. It's up to the Titans to rally the remaining heroes to defeat Deathstroke's ever-growing forces and avert total destruction.
And that's going to bring today's episode to a close, but if you enjoyed this one, check out this one right here, and if you like all of the content, like, subscribe, and comment. It helps us out. But other than that, I'll see you next time when I talk about all things comics.